Like C major, it's important to play seventh chords to get that authentic blues sound. So instead of C major, you're going to play C7. And instead of F major, you're going to play F7. And instead of G major, you're going to play G7. For the left hand accompaniment, I recommend that you play the blues shuffle. Except now we're going to play eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So now we're going to grab each of these notes twice. 1 and then 2 and 3 and 4 and then when we change chords like to F, we're going to do the same thing here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then same on the G chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now at level 2, the scale that I recommend that you use to improvise is what's called the Mixo Blues scale. It's a 9-note scale and it sounds really good over all of your chords. So the scale uses these notes: C, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, A, and B flat. Now there are a couple tricks to remembering the notes of the scale. First, you can think of it as your C minor blues scale, except we're adding 3 notes: the D, the E, and the A. Alternately, you could think of it as the Mixolydian scale, which is basically like a C major scale, except we're going to use a B flat instead of the B. This is called the C Mixolydian scale, except we're going to add 2 additional notes: the E flat and the G flat. And this is actually why we call it the Mixo Blues scale, is because it's a combination of the Mixolydian scale and the blues scale. By the way, if you want to do a deep dive on blues soloing and you're a beginner to early intermediate level pianist, we put together the full learning track for your level. This is the blues learning track. And in this learning track, you will learn everything that you need to know about playing the blues and
와, 레벨 3으로 바로 넘어가자.
And here's an example for how you might improvise at this level.
Boost your mobile game's revenue with rewarded ads. Unlike regular ads, rewarded ads are a part of the game. They're not.
Alright, level 3 is early intermediate, and here's an example for how you might improvise at this level. Jazzy sound, and this starts with your left-hand chords. Instead of playing ordinary 7th chords that I taught you at level 2, you're going to play what are called 3-note rootless voicings. And a 3-note rootless voicing is when you take a chord like a C7 and you remove the root and the 5th from the chord, and you add 1 additional note. In this case, we're going to add the D, which we call the 9th. And we call this the 9th because it's 9 notes above the root. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So instead of C7, you're going to play a C9. And notice there's no root in this chord. Therefore, we call it the rootless voicing. Now on the F7 chord, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to remove the root. And the 5th, we're going to leave these 2 notes in, but we're going to put the E flat on the bottom. And then we're going to add a really cool note on the top, the D, which we call instead of playing the ordinary 7th chord, we remove the root and the 5th. We're going to put the 7th down here on the bottom, and we're going to add an E, which is also the 13th of a G chord. So instead of G7, we play the G13. Now for your left hand accompaniment, I recommend that you play what's called the Charleston Stride. And the Charleston Stride is when you jump from the root up to the chord. And this is a stride left hand, when you jump from root to chord, but you're going to play the Charleston rhythm. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you're going to do this on all your chords. So same with the F chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then same on the G chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now when you get to level 3, the scale that I recommend that you use to improvise is what's called the dominant bebop scale. This is an 8-note scale that will give your blues solo a little bit more of a jazzy sound. So when you're improvising over your C7 chord, you can use this C dominant bebop scale. It's a lot like your C Mixolydian scale, except you're adding one extra note, the B natural. And when you're improvising over your F7 chord, you can use your F dominant bebop scale, which uses these 8 notes. Once again, it's like the F Mixolydian scale, except you're adding an E natural. Finally, on your G7 chord, you can use your G dominant diminished scale, which uses these 8 notes. All right, at level 4, here's an example for how you might improvise. Shells, and instead of playing 3-note rootless voicings, I recommend that you play 4-note rootless voicings. Starting with passing chords. At level 4, blues pianists will start to add some chords in between their other chords. For example, if you look at measure 5 of your 12-bar blues, you have an F chord. Well, level 4 blues pianists will oftentimes add a G minor 7 and a C7 in front of this F chord. This is called the 2-5-1 chord progression, and it's one example of the types of passing chords that you can add to your blues. Now for the chords themselves, I recommend that you use 4-note rootless voicings. And the way to do this is to take the chords that I taught you earlier, your 3-note rootless voicings, and you're going to add 1 note. This is the 13th of the chord, and this makes it a C13 chord. And you can do this on your other chords, like F. Instead of playing the 3-note rootless voicing, you're going to add a G, and it gives it a little jazzier of a sound. Now when you're playing rootless voicings, you're typically going to jump from the root up to the chord, but this presents a problem. When you do this technique, this takes up 4 beats to jump from the root to the chord. But what do you play if the chord only takes 2 beats? If the chord only takes up 2 beats, then I recommend that you change techniques to your shell chords. And shell chords are basically when you just play 2 notes from the chord. So if you go to your G minor 7 and it only takes 2 beats, then you're going to play a 2-note chord shell. And then your C7 only lasts for 2 beats, you're going to play a 2-note chord shell, and then you're going to go back to your rootless voicing on your level. Now at level 4, the scale that I recommend that you focus on in your solo is what's called the dominant diminished scale. And basically, anytime you're on a chord like a C7 chord, you can play this amazing scale. You get some really cool, colorful notes. The notes of the C dominant diminished scale are C, D flat, E flat, E, F sharp, G, A, and B flat. And the easy way to remember this scale is you start on this note and you go half step, whole step, half step, whole step, all the way up the piano, and you end up with your dominant diminished scale. And you can use this scale on any chord. For example, when you get to your F7 chord, you can use the F dominant diminished scale. And when you get to your G7 chord, you could use your G dominant diminished scale. Now, if you're feeling a little intimidated 12 different dominant diminished scales, I have good news for you. There are